Hi there, and welcome to Beyond the Pitch, presented by Cornerstone Staffing. This is FC Dallas's way to stay connected with you as we're all working remotely and staying home right now. This series is going to take you through some of the career opportunities in the sports industry. Some of you have passions for sports. We know that is true, and we just can't play for a living. I know I wanted to be a professional athlete, but there are so many alternative career paths for those of you interested in a career in sports. And today we're featuring someone whose work you see, but a man whose career path you might not know. We are happy to welcome in the Toyota Stadium and FC Dallas Vice President of Complex Management, Tom Jones, to our very first show. Tom, you can only do the first one once, so the fact that you're our guest today is a testament to just how popular and big you are.
Awesome. Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
Well, this is exciting because, you have a job, I think, that may not necessarily be glamorous, but is certainly one that is romanticized. Your career started out in grounds crew, maintaining the grass, and now you oversee all of the grass management for all of Toyota Stadium, Toyota Soccer Center, which includes, what are we up to? 18 fields on this 145-acre complex. It's not a glamorous job, but it's certainly one that interests a lot of people, it seems like.
Yeah, everybody always has an interest in their grass at their home and not at their home, but at sports facilities. So they take a special interest in that, and especially with the stadium field and all, with the game of soccer. One thing I learned, I started out in business coming from baseball and going into soccer, is that people in the soccer fandom, they're very big on the pitch and making sure, because it's just a different game than what I grew up with baseball and football. So the pitch is very important. So people take a keen interest on that.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into your career path, how you get the grass to look the way it does, and you're also going to share some tips. If you're willing to share some proprietary trade secrets here, you're also going to share some tips on, how we at home dealing with this crazy North Texas weather, or weather wherever you are. If you'd like to ask Tom some landscaping questions down in the comments section, please do so. But we're going to dive into all of that over the course of the next 20 minutes. We should start at the beginning, because I think your career path is an interesting one, and it's one that I can certainly appreciate. You go into school and you have to think about what you want to do for a living. Your college major and where you are professionally may not be perfectly in sync, although learning what your college major is, I think, parlays to every area of life. But as you went to school, kind of walk us through what it is you were hoping to do to where you, and walk us through what you were hoping to do, and tell us how you got to where you are today.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. Where I started and where I ended up is completely different. Where I started at, I wanted to be, you remember the show I Dream of Jeannie? I wanted to be,
Absolutely.
I wanted to be an astronaut and marry the beautiful blonde. I wanted to be a pilot. Back then, it was during Apollo missions and all that. So I grew up on that. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to fly jets and all that stuff. So I was in college. I actually took too many courses in psychology, and I had to declare a major, and I was not going to take any more courses than I had to. And so I declared a counseling psychology major in college. But I was always a sports nut all my life. And so I was always following sports. And then when I was in college, I had the opportunity to go work for Texas Rangers on their grounds crew, because I heard a friend of mine in church said, "Hey, they're hiring at the Rangers." I said, "Oh, really? For doing what?" I said, "They said tarp crew." He said, "Yeah, you get paid $25 a game, and it's like 30 minutes worth of work pregame, the batting, setting and break down batting cages and so forth, and then if it rains, you help pull the tarp. Otherwise, you get free baseball." So before that,
It's easy,
I was already,
right?
yeah, no brainer to me. I was paying $1.50 to get an outfield bleacher sit at the Ranger Stadium back then, in the old Ranger Stadium. So to me, it's a good excuse. I'm getting paid, and I'll get free baseball. So that's kind of how I got started with that. But I'd always had a knack for grounds work. When I was in high school, I built a golf green in my backyard. I would mow the yard. My dad, he eventually started paying me because he never asked me to mow it. I just did it because I liked to do it. So he started feeling guilty. He started paying me to mow the yard. So it's something I was naturally inclined to do. But at the time when I was in college, there was no major in sports field management like there is today. So all the groundskeepers back then, the only way they learned was by starting on the ground level at the stadium or pro club or minor league baseball, and then working their way up and learning from the head guy that they were under. It was an on-the-job training. So, but I went after I went into college. I worked baseball and doing grounds work. I went and got in the military, and I flew and jets. A lot of people don't know that. And then when I got out of the military, I came back to Arlington, and my passion, it was like, what am I going to do? Is right after Iraqi war and so forth. I was wondering what I'm going to do. The only other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to be in sports, and I loved grass. And it just so happened when they were building a new stadium, which is they're now the old stadium.
Crazy.
They were building it. They were needing to hire people, so I went to my old boss, and he hired me back on full time, and that's kind of how I got back into the program.
I think that's a great lesson there, because we're, approaching high school, college graduation right now. And, so many young professionals are feeling the pressure to declare what it is they're going to do, whether they're entering college or graduating college. And I think that's a great lesson. Just because you study something in school, and things have changed a little bit over the years from when you and I were both in college, just because you studied something in school doesn't mean you can't pivot away from that and learn and acquire some skills once you get out of school that may be better suited for you, both personally and professionally, and that may help drive your career path forward there. I think that's a great lesson.
Yeah, correct. And my father, the last bit of advice he gave me before he passed, when I was just finished graduating college and I was going to go in the military and go flight school and all that, and he said, son, he says, my father was a pilot. He said, son, whatever you do, just make sure you follow your passion. He said, don't worry about the money. He said, because if you're following your passion, doing what you like to do, the money will follow. Because if you're doing what you like to do, you're usually good at it. So I stuck with that philosophy. When the military tour ended, I came back and it's like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I stuck with my gut was what I was passionate about naturally, which was sports, and I love grass. So I knew I had to be around those two things, and I didn't care how much money I made. My family thought it was crazy because at the time I took a pay cut, half of what I was making, and I didn't really care. I knew I had to start somewhere because I didn't have the formal training, because I didn't have the college sports management degree back then like they had today. So I knew I just had to start at the bottom and work my way up.
So you were at the ballpark for quite some time, and then you find your way over to soccer, and we're seeing some of your team's fine handiwork behind me here. We'll dive into all of this in a little bit, but you make your way to Toyota Stadium from Arlington to Frisco. Really, at the end of the day, it's grass, but it's a different kind of cut. It's a different kind of management. It's a different kind of maintenance over the course of a long season as well, but different weather patterns also. How did you get to the soccer space?
Well, it's a long story, but the quick is my boss at the Rangers at the time had left, and I was still at the Rangers. He went to work for the Hunt family, and he needed it. He was more of a buildings, facilities, construction guy, but he needed a grass guy. And so he called me up and asked me if I'd be interested in coming over and consulting on the project. At that time, they were getting ready to break ground on the facility, and that back in 2004. And so they hired me on to consult with them on the design and construction of the fields out there. And then a couple of months later, they hired me on full time to manage and operate it.
So as you talk about, we know one thing I can guarantee you is the same. Both baseball players and soccer players, baseball managers and soccer coaches, they're particular about their grass. Is that fair to say?
No doubt. No doubt. In baseball, it was like if the players were having errors and having issues, the field sucked. It was terrible.
Right.
You did a terrible job. If they were winning, it was all great. You're the best groundskeeper in the world.
But nothing changed, right?
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. If the team's winning, everything is good. So if the team's struggling, we all struggle, but we feel it with them because we're so passionate about sports and we live it. It's not like I was telling my guys and the interns coming in, and I'm like, look, if you're coming in thinking you're going to get rich right off the bat, you're not. I said, the guys the people are making money are the ones wearing cleats. I said, so you have to be passionate. You have to really want to do this. It's something that's in you. And it was something I always wanted to do. And so we live and breathe this. It's not something that we come in and punch a clock for. It's something we live, that we enjoy, that we look forward to get up each day. And right now it's just killing us not having games because we're used to playing right now. But we love rooting for the team. We want that pitch as perfect as we can get it. So we have a vested interest in this and provide the best product we can for the players. so we give them every opportunity to go out there and to be their best and perform.
So I'm going to change my backdrop here. Let us see some more of your fine work. What are some of the biggest differences going from baseball to soccer in terms of blade length, grass type, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, baseball was more about the dirt. You only had, you had 2 acres. It's actually the same size of space, 2 acres. But in baseball, you had 3 outfielders running around with 2 acres, which is not hard because everybody else was on the dirt, except for Pudge Rodriguez, who wouldn't warm up in the batter's box. He was warm up outside the batter's box and just scuff out those 2 spots. But it was okay. He was a good enough player. We didn't mind repairing from behind him. But in soccer, the big deal is about the pitch, it's about the roll. It's about consistency, about firmness, but compaction. If it's too hard, too soft, there's a lot more variables into that because it's kind of like pool. The ball is rolling on that surface. It's very important for it to be consistent. The more consistent you are, it makes it easier for them to know what they're to anticipate and how to play the ball and how to pass and how it's going to respond and how it's going to react. And when in sports, home field advantage is a big deal. So the more consistent we are, it's easier for them to be a better player because they know exactly what to expect out of the field.
So how do you deal with the heavy play that a soccer pitch gets, particularly Toyota Stadium? Because Toyota Stadium not only during a regular season hosts FC Dallas matches, it hosts high school football matches for Frisco ISD. It hosts soccer matches for Frisco ISD. It hosts an odd concert here and there right before a soccer match. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's you have to be real strategic in your planning, and it really takes a lot of forethought ahead of time. It's like it can't be a deal where you're reactionary. You have to plan for events ahead of time. So for concerts and so forth, there's actually strategic planning that goes into preparing and planning for how we're going to deal with the maintenance and where and how we need to treat the grass prior to a concert versus prior to football versus prior to soccer. Each one of those has different needs. Football guys, they kind of like the field firm, harder. They don't want to chunk up, but the soccer guys like it soft and smoother. So there's different prescriptions there we have to deal with there for depending on what the event is. Concerts put a lot of stress on the grass. We have to prep the grass ahead of time. We have to, treat for funguses because you're covering the grass, which is a living plant. You're basically trapping air. So you have a lot of concerns about disease. There's things that we have to do there in preparation for that takes several weeks lead time. And then also we have to work with scheduling. So making sure we have plenty of time between the games to get the fields back to where they need to be for whatever the event is that's coming up. But it's a lot of planning throughout the year. We coordinate with Nick and Jimmy and Dan and Lucci on what we need to do. They ask us, say, hey, can we do this? What does the field need? So we coordinate that with them. We say, hey, look, this is what we need. We did this much time. We need this much of a gap. And then you have to factor in the weather because I tell people all the time, I said, we're like cooks. We can put all the ingredients together and put it all in there. I said, but the temperature's not right in the oven. It can make it real hard for your souffle to rise. So we can sometimes do everything right, but sometimes if the weather doesn't work with you, it works against you. Sometimes it makes it really, really challenging. So, we can take some credit for putting all the ingredients in there and feel when the weather's working with us, it looks awesome and great. But then there's times even despite of our best efforts, the weather can work against you. So, but there's not one specific thing. It's real granular, and it's something that we had to learn coming from baseball to soccer. We had to learn what the players' needs are, what their likes, dislikes. Because when we came into soccer, at the time, there was only 2. I think it was Columbus Crew had a field, and then Home Depot Center, and then we were the 3rd facility. So all the groundskeepers, and there was no soccer groundskeepers in America, and they were all football or baseball people. So coming in, we were new to the game. I'm a football, baseball guy, and I became a really quick, as you can see by the pictures of my office ball. a very quick soccer. I'm a sports guy, so it doesn't matter what it is. We could have the pitch and pennies league, and I would probably be following it. But it's just something we naturally do, and we love. And so we all became very big fans of it. We love the game, and we have a great appreciation for the game, understanding, and it helps us understand better what the players need, what they're looking for, and what the teams are looking for on the field.
You mentioned Lucci, head coach Lucci Gonzalez, who's in his second full season as FC Dallas's head coach of the first team. And we know he is one of the most precise individuals I think I've ever met. As you've gotten to work with so many FC Dallas head coaches over the years, does each individual coach have a particular style of pitch that they like, or have certain instructions for you or suggestions?
No doubt. They're all different.
Really?
And it really, like I said, yeah, it depends on the strategy of the team.
Yeah.
Sometimes they want the field faster, sometimes they want it slower. It's very similar to baseball, where you really grow how hard or soft you want the front of the plate to be. Same as in soccer. Some guys want the grass cut tight and short. Some of them like it a little drier. Some like it slicker. Some of them, most of them always want the wet with the ryegrass on there to keep the ball, get that action on the ball. But they do. Some teams prefer it to be longer if they're a little slower team. If they're fast, they want it short and tight. And there was previous coach, he loved it fast, because we had a lot of fast players and a lot of speed at the time. So we were kind of pretty tight sometimes. And but we'll work with the coaches, whatever benefits. Like I said, it's home field advantage. So we will crop the field as needed to fit the strategy of our team.
That's fascinating to me, and a real challenge, I think, as you go from year to year. And many times, I guess sometimes people's tastes can change as well. I think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But what's also interesting from my perspective is that it's not just about Toyota Stadium. You look at all these fields up above my head here. Toyota Soccer Center houses, are we at 18 now, Tom? Are we at 18 fields?
Yeah, counting the stadium is 18, but we have 2 ancillary training areas. We don't really count those in the rotation because they're not technically official, but yes, we have 18 fields total.
It's a lot of grass to manage. It's a lot of different types.
Yes.
A lot to manage.
We also manage 19 fields in Dallas at MoneyGram Soccer Park as well.
So it's a large staff, and that's probably where that psychology training from college comes into play. If we're being candid there.
No doubt. That's exactly right.
I bet that comes into play. So, what's so great about the opportunity we have at Toyota Soccer Center is that there are so many training grounds for teams to practice on. And you have experienced that, because teams come from all over the world to train on our grass. And they've also come to learn from you guys about how you get your grass so good. And I'm not bragging here. There is no bias in this. Toyota Stadium, Toyota Soccer Center, MoneyGram Soccer Park, the facility that Tom referenced just a second ago in Dallas, have all been lauded, recognized, and awarded many, many honors from turf management, grounds crew organizations, a slew of organizations. Walk us through what some of these legacy clubs, was it Man City, Man U was over here, Real Madrid? I mean, they've all been over here, and they have all praised what they've experienced in terms of a soccer pitch or training ground.
Yeah, one thing about this community is it's very tight-knit. The groundskeeper community is very tight. And we support each other, and we're always rooting for each other's success of other clubs in their fields, because it's never good to see another club struggle with their field. It's never good. And it's bad for our industry. So we are always supporting each other. So with that in mind, worldwide, even internationally, we have an annual conference every year in the wintertime. And we are more and more every year, we're getting club managers from grounds managers from all over Europe that are coming in to attend this with us. And we have a lot of time to share ideas, and we're always talking to each other and sharing best practices. We've had the groundskeeper from Manchester United has been over here at our facility. He's actually worked with us on implementing phrase mowing, we were the first facility in the country to start implementing phrase mowing, which was a technique used in Holland first originally. And when the groundskeepers here, they came out and watched us and what we were doing. They thought we were crazy at the time, but then they realized and saw how well it works. And that was a technique that they use in Europe to rid pollen out of the fields, but it also has a dual technique for here with Bermuda grass to help us maintain thatch control in older mature fields. So we saw the benefit of that. We started implementing that. Joe from Manchester United, who maintains their training grounds, came over and helped us, showed us how to do it. We started doing that. We've also had Paul Burgers from Real Madrid out here and consulting with us as well. So we've had people from all over the country. So we all share. and we're always looking to learn and grow. And there's always new techniques and ways of doing things. And from the time that we started and we broke ground in 2004, how we maintained the field then to how we maintain it today is totally different. And the industry is changing rapidly with technology and so forth. And the techniques, it's amazing how fast it's grown. And now that all the clubs now are getting their own soccer specific stadiums, there's actually the need there. So people, not all the clubs are having to share. So you can actually, or the primary tenant soccer, you can actually put a little more effort into the grass there. So
I think that I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think you bring up something that is so important no matter what the industry. You talk about how back in 2004, when ground was broken, excuse me, on Toyota Stadium in Frisco, things have changed remarkably in the 15, 16 years since then. We may know something about an industry or may know our area of business, but don't we have to evolve as professionals constantly to maintain our integrity, to maintain our relevance and our marketability in a particular role?
No doubt. And that's been my philosophy. And I always tell my guys, if you're not learning, you're regressing. I said, so we're always out there learning. And I told my guys from day one that we got here, the staff that I hired the day one, it's the same staff we have today.
Amazing.
And they've been with us for 15 years. Yeah, it's amazing. Got a great crew and great guys, very knowledgeable, very passionate about what they do. They love the game, they love the sport, and they love turf maintenance and turf management. And so I have several guys on my staff. If you talk to them, approach them about it, they will talk your ear off. Apologize now. They just very passionate about what they do. Same as me. Something we talk about all day long. We're a bunch of turf nerds. And so, but it is something that you got to be learning every year. And I told my guys, don't be afraid to take risks and try new things. And we've kind of been on the cutting edge, the forefront of that here. We've tried a lot of new techniques that we were the first ones to do here in the United States that everybody else was like, what are you doing? You're crazy if you do that. And we showed them the benefit of that. Now everybody's doing it. So, it's things like that. But sometimes, as a chef in the kitchen, you get some stinker recipes, and we've had our share of stinkers, but we've learned and grown over that process. And I'm glad we went through that, because the only way is how not to do something is by doing it. And if that doesn't work, you chunk that out and you keep the good ideas. So we've been doing that over the year, and I think it's over the years, and I think it's proven out through our staff and how we maintain the facilities and able to keep up with the demand.
A few more questions here on our first episode of Beyond the Pitch, presented by Cornerstone Staffing. Tom Jones, FC Dallas and Toyota Stadium's Vice President of Complex Management, joining us today, sharing everything he knows about getting good grass. Have a question from Jose Murillo, Tom, and I know it's one that you have addressed and answered and pondered many, many times. Tom, if a roof was added to shade the fans, what challenges would you face, or is it possible? We know the sun can be challenging when it's warm. How would that impact the grass if there was an additional shade structure added to Toyota Stadium?
It does have a big impact on the grass, but one of the things that we have learned is that there is grow lights, and they work really well. So if we do add more shade structures, they will create shade, and it does create a challenge on our ability to grow the grass as thick and as aggressively as we need it, as we do on the south end right now. Bermuda grass down there, we basically just have to replace it each year. And that's even with grow lights, because there's about 6-7 months out of the year we're not getting any sun at all on that south end. So we have to change that out every year in the summertime, which we're about to do that here this next month. And so, but we can do that. It's just something that we can do, and it's something that they do in Europe. More and more facilities, Austin FC, that their facility will be a real good marker for us when we add shade structures, and the challenges there with trying to grow grass in the shade in the southern states. In the north and up in Europe, it's a lot easier up there because they're growing ryegrass, and so even though they have shade, they're still using grow lights. But ryegrass responds a lot better to grow lights, and also does a lot better in shade as far as shade tolerance. Whereas we're ryegrass winter, Bermuda in the summer. Bermuda does not like shade at all, and it actually needs about 12 hours of sun a day. So not to get too far in the weeds, shade will affect the pitch. It'll affect the quality of it. But then also we have looked at adding shade to the east side, and people always say, where's the shade on the east side? We have worked diligently on and have done a lot of studies, and we're still doing that right now to figure out ways to get shade on the east side. But right now we're trying to look at the best way to do it, and because a lot of the first options we looked at, we couldn't get enough shade, but maybe the first 5 or 6 rows would get shaded because the angle of the sun and when we play our games in the evening. So it's a challenge based on the sun where it sets and what time we play and so forth. So I understand it's hot. It gets hot out there. So we would love the shade too. But I believe whatever we do, I believe that the technology's advanced enough from when we first built that we should be able to manage it.
One last question here as we wrap it up on our first episode of Beyond the Pitch, presented by Cornerstone Staffing. Tom, if somebody wants to get into the grounds crew maintenance space for a sports franchise, a university, a sports property, what are some early steps that individual needs to do to have success in this career?
Well, the first step is, hey, you got to like mowing. If you love to mow, that's step one. If you don't like to mow, I would look at something else. But if you love to mow, and if you naturally go out and like to work in the yard, do those sorts of things, and you're sports minded and you like the combination of those two, you got to have the passion there first. You got to have the desire and want to. And then if that's there and that's something you wanted to pursue even further, then there are schooling, there are educational opportunities, even at the junior colleges now that are offering turf degrees and so forth. And I mean, it's growing. So even UNT, I don't think they're not too far away from doing something like that similar here soon. I wouldn't doubt. A&M, if you're looking to go to the big school, they have one of the top turf programs in the country. I'd say one of the top 3 besides Penn State, Michigan State, and then maybe Iowa State, and maybe top 5. But I put A&M at the top of the list. But a little bias there since all my guys are Aggies. But yeah, if you were looking at that route, I would look at A&M as your first choice. But there are also a lot of other junior colleges that offer turf programs as well. I'm looking at something like that. And then in the summertime, get a job at a golf course or with a sports club. So we're hiring all the time for groundskeepers, entry level. It's entry level work. And that's the way I started. I started on entry level, and I loved it. It didn't matter what it was, whether it was on the end of a weed eater, on the edger, pulling string, emptying buckets of grass off the outfield. Baseball, it didn't matter what it was, pulling tarp. I loved doing it, just loved being there. Yep. So that's the first thing.
I think that's a common thread for anyone who works in the sports industry. You just love being there no matter what you're doing. Great stuff, Tom. Such good stuff. Thank you so much. I know people love to talk grass and learn more about this. If you have any additional questions, please post them down below in the comments section. Please look for more interviews with members of the FC Dallas and Toyota Stadium front office at fcdallas.com/Beyond the Pitch. Thank you, Tom. Most importantly, thanks to each and every one of you who joined us today and hopped into the comments section. We look forward to checking in with you again very, very soon. Take care, guys.